The sanderling, Calidris alba, is a small shorebird whose life connects the frozen tundra of the high Arctic with the warm sands of tropical coasts. Each year they breed only in the circumpolar north, where the brief Arctic summer provides a sudden abundance of insects and open ground for nesting. In that short window of continuous daylight, chicks grow quickly before the onset of winter, and then the birds disperse across the globe. Their migration is immense, carrying them thousands of kilometers south to wintering grounds that stretch along the coasts of Africa, South America, Asia, and India. On the Arabian Sea shores of Kerala, including Bekel, they arrive in flocks, their pale plumage blending with the sand as they chase the waves back and forth in their characteristic feeding dance. During the breeding season in the high Arctic, they nest in shallow scrapes on the ground, exposed to the open sky. While incubating their eggs, they sleep with the bill tucked under the scapular feathers, the shoulder feathers that lie over the wing, a posture that conserves warmth and reduces visibility to predators. This quiet endurance in the sub-zero north is the foundation of their life cycle, timed to the brief Arctic summer when insects emerge in abundance and daylight never fades. When they migrate south to wintering grounds such as the Arabian Sea coast of India, their behavior changes. No longer tied to nests, they spend their nights roosting in large, closely packed flocks, usually above the high tide line where the sand is dry and disturbance is less. By day they are lively and restless, probing the wet sand for tiny crustaceans and worms, always keeping pace with the rhythm of the surf. Sanderlings are famous for their wave chasing. They dart forward as the waves retreat and probe the wet sand for food, then sprint back as the water rushes in. This behavior gives them a clockwork toy appearance, their legs moving so quickly they seem to bicycle across the sand. The term, bicycling, is often used to describe this rapid, mechanical leg motion, a rhythm that matches the pulse of the sea. It is both a feeding strategy and a spectacle, a dance of survival performed on the edge of the tide. In Bekel, however, what captivates observers is not only their feeding but also their resilience. Dogs chase them along the shoreline, scattering the flocks, and few people pause to consider the extraordinary journey that has brought them here from the far north. Despite this disturbance, the birds remain active, resilient, and determined, embodying the endurance of migration. They cannot fly back to the Arctic in one continuous stretch. Their migration is accomplished in short laps or stages, stopping at key coastal wetlands along the way to rest and refuel. From India's Arabian Sea coast, Sanderlings typically move northwest across the subcontinent, then follow flyways that connect them to the Middle East, East Africa, or the Persian Gulf. From there, they continue in successive hops through Central Asia or along the coasts of the Black Sea and Caspian, eventually reaching northern Europe or Siberia. By late spring, they reach the high Arctic tundra in Greenland, Canada, or Siberia, where they breed. They do not migrate to Antarctica because their breeding strategy is tied to the Arctic's unique summer conditions: 24-hour daylight, a sudden explosion of insects, and relatively few predators. Antarctica, though also polar, is inhospitable for them. Its landmass is largely ice-covered, with no tundra habitat and no insect boom to support chick growth. Instead, Antarctica supports species adapted to its environment, such as penguins and skuas. Sanderlings are specialized for the Arctic cycle, not the Antarctic one. Although the sanderling is still listed as a species of least concern by conservation bodies, studies have noted declines in their numbers, a reminder that even widespread migrants are vulnerable to pressures such as habitat loss, climate change, and human disturbance. Distribution maps of their wintering range show them spread across the southern world's coasts, from the beaches of South Africa to the shores of South America, from Australia to India, a global presence that reflects both their adaptability and the dependence on healthy coastal ecosystems. The global distribution makes them true circumpolar migrants, breeding in the Arctic ring around the North Pole, wintering across tropical and temperate coasts worldwide, and always returning to the tundra to renew their cycle. Poets too have noticed their restless beauty. Joe Balistreri captured their mechanical sprinting in a haiku: Sanderlings, a boy's wind-up robot chases the surf. Kensley Green likened their wings and beaks to tools of art, chisels and styluses tracing delicate lines. Ed Leaflang saw their fleeting tracks on sand as living cuneiform, crooked running lines nearly quatrains. Jane Lovell, in Reasons for Sanderlings, wrote, "Their presence in winter defines land that sea will claim." These lines show how Sanderlings have become metaphors for impermanence, endurance, and the fragile frontier between land and sea. Siberian poets, though not often naming Sanderlings directly, use migratory birds as emblems of distance, exile, and resilience, reflecting the vast landscapes of the north and the long journeys birds undertake. The Sanderling's story is one of contrasts, sleeping quietly on Arctic nests with bills tucked under scapular feathers, roosting in tight flocks above the tide on tropical sands, and feeding tirelessly in the surf by day. In Bekel, their winter life unfolds against the backdrop of fishermen launching boats and hauling nets, a human rhythm that shares the same sands. The birds feed and rest while people work, two forms of coastal life intersecting without much notice of one another. Yet in their quiet persistence, the Sanderlings bring the Arctic into dialogue with the tropics, reminding us that the cycles of migration and survival are not confined to one place but stretch across continents and seas. Their story is one of movement and resilience, of fragile lives sustained by the pulse of waves, and of a global journey that ties perilous beaches to the frozen north. They cannot fly back to the Arctic in one continuous stretch. Their migration is accomplished in short laps or stages, stopping at key coastal wetlands along the way to rest and refuel. From India's Arabian Sea coast, Sanderlings typically move northwest across the subcontinent, then follow flyways that connect them to the Middle East, East Africa, or the Persian Gulf. From there, they continue in successive hops through Central Asia or along the coasts of the Black Sea and Caspian, eventually reaching northern Europe or Siberia. By late spring, they reach the high Arctic tundra in Greenland, Canada, or Siberia, where they breed. Yet the journey is perilous. Many birds die en route, struck down by exhaustion in storms, taken by raptors at stopover sites, or lost to collisions with human structures. Mortality is part of the rhythm of migration, a hidden cost behind the spectacle of their arrival on tropical sands. A curious anatomical detail shapes their life. Unlike most waders, Sanderlings lack a hindtoe, which makes them poor perchers but superb sprinters, their feet designed for speed across open beaches rather than clinging to branches. This adaptation binds them to the shore, even when danger presses. To study these fragile travelers, researchers fit them with small colored rings or lightweight tags on their legs. Some are simple plastic bands coded for visual recognition, while others carry tiny radio or GPS devices that transmit signals to receivers along flyways. International projects such as the Global Flyway Network and the Wader Study Group's Sanderling project have coordinated tagging across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Birds tagged in one country are often resighted thousands of kilometers away, proof of their immense migrations and the global collaboration required to understand them. Statistics suggest that a single sanderling may cover more than 10,000 kilometers in a season, yet only those that survived the hazards of migration return to the Arctic's brief summer to breed. Their average life expectancy is around 7 to 13 years, but many never reach it, succumbing to the relentless risks of storms, predators, and human disturbance. Their story is not only one of endurance but also of loss, resilience, and the strange adaptations that tie them to the edge of the tide. Beyond the immense journey itself, the Sanderling's story is marked by fragility and curious detail. Their average life expectancy is around 7 to 13 years, though many never reach it, succumbing to storms, predators, or the relentless strain of migration. Mortality is highest in the first year, when juveniles attempt their maiden flights across oceans and continents. Male and female birds are almost indistinguishable in plumage, both turning pale gray in winter and mottled reddish-brown in summer, yet subtle contrasts emerge in the Arctic. Males are slightly smaller, more territorial, and often remain longer at the nest, while females may depart earlier, leaving incubation to their partners. Anatomically, they are unusual among waders in lacking a hind toe, an absence that prevents perching but makes them superb sprinters across sand, their lives bound to the shore. To trace these fragile travelers, international projects such as the Global Flyway Network and the Wader Study Group's Sanderling project have fitted birds with colored rings and lightweight GPS tags. Sightings thousands of kilometers apart prove their immense migrations and reveal the hidden attrition along the way. Statistics suggest that a single Sanderling may cover more than 10,000 kilometers in a season, yet only those that endure return to the Arctic's brief summer to breed. Their resilience lies not only in distance but in adaptation. Sprinting feet without hind toes, cryptic plumage that blends with sand, and a life cycle tied to the pulse of waves. In these strange details, the Sanderling embodies both the endurance and the vulnerability of migration.